Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Monday night. Yes, me and Mark are here. Some podcasts have been struggling to get back on, probably because they drank their weight in beer at Wembley. But these two sad bastards weren't there. So we are here to talk about what we're talking about every Monday night. What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on, Mark. I'm still not over Sunday. What's going on with you, mate?
To be fair, I think looking at it, it's a little bit of the same. You watch a game where possession-wise dominated, you've matched in terms of shots, and there's just no clinicalness to the game, and it's just. I think I've come out of yesterday with a sense of frustration having watched that, because there was the opportunity, wasn't there? We'll start that on a negative, and we'll move away from that.
No. Well, I tell you what, we'll get into the positive. Obviously, the weekend was amazing. So many Newcastle fans heading down to London, taking over the capital. If anyone didn't see this was the Geordie, the Toon Army in Trafalgar Square. Absolutely sensational, to be honest, Mark, wasn't it? The scenes, we were getting videos and pictures from the squad that were there. We had loads of the Evermore squad down there. Unbelievable scenes. And do you know what was the best part about this, Mark, as well, before we get to some of the little cameos who appeared there? The best thing about all of this was that the Geordies even cleaned up after themselves, mate. How class is this fan base?
Taking a leaf from the Japan fans at the World Cup, and that happened there, where they stayed behind and cleaned up after themselves. Good on them. Do you know what it is? Because it was an absolute state, and yeah, hardly surprising given the numbers that were there. It was just sensational to see the videos of people on the trains and the coaches on the way down. Special mentions to the ones that overtook the Sunderland bus on their way down at Coventry. Don't think they enjoyed their bus ride back from Coventry on Saturday afternoon, which was very funny. It was just Newcastle made it. The fans made it special all weekend, and it was just. That's 24 years of waiting, that, isn't it? That's everybody just going, fuck it, we'll just turn up and we don't care. We're going to go and have a party.
Well, it was sensational, to be honest. I mean, I do feel sorry for any couple who's trying to have a romantic weekend in London that weekend, because they were severely attacked by the Geordies. As much as we are a whole lot of fun as the Geordies, I'm sure they would have had a great cracker. Yeah, you wouldn't want to be having a lovely weekend away at the theatre when all that was going on. But
sitting by candlelight, serenaded by "We've Got Bruno in the Middle," I just think there's something special about that, isn't it?
A cappella, setting the scene. But obviously there was loads of people there. You know, we had some of the Evermore squad there, as we said. There was a few other little surprise guests who sneaked in to Trafalgar Square. I had a double take this, actually. I just thought it was a couple of lads on the scrounge. No, it wasn't. It was actually our owners. So that's Murdad, if you can see there, and Jamie Rubin hiding under Robin Hood style disguises, which is absolutely amazing. What's an interesting one with that, Mark, is if you saw in the game, Murdad was sitting behind Amanda Staveley. I wonder if he got bollocked for that. And she went, right, you're up there. I told you not to go out. I've seen you going out on Twitter. You're up there. So he got himself in a trouble.
I do quite like. I mean, they've put themselves in sort of quite a position, haven't they? If they suddenly get spotted and completely surrounded, they're not getting out of there quickly. But fair play to them for going down and sampling the seeds, because I think anybody would want to. It was just. I said it was special. The whole thing. Yes, the result wasn't what anybody wanted, but the whole weekend just felt like this is the coming back moment, isn't it? This is we've sort of announcing ourselves on this stage again, and there's a bit more solidity to the club than there was after previous appearances. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get stuck right into the nuts and guts of the game in a minute. But just to finish on Trafalgar Square, there was a few little celebrities that snuck in as well, as you can see there. There's Mr. Fender sneaking in alongside, I believe that's Chris from Gallagher Shots. So great to see them there enjoying themselves. And obviously, was it Johnny Blue Hat, I think it is, the saxophonist playing Local Hero, which is absolutely incredible. So obviously some celebs like Sam Fender thought they'd go a bit incognito, and then there was other fuckers like James Corden who just let everybody know he was at the game, loud and proud. I feel sorry for this old fella next to him there. If this isn't an advert for how wrong these ticket allocations were, I don't know what it is, because poor Derek there has come down to Wembley. He's been supporting the club probably since the 60s, and he's been stuck next to this loudmouth bastard screaming his head off with more stretch marks than we had shots on target. So I do feel a bit sorry for poor Derek there.
You can't knock him. I mean, it's full on supporting the club. That is, yeah. But I mean, you see him it's virtually every game exactly the same. It doesn't matter the weather. I mean, typical bloody Geordie, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, he's the quintessential Geordie on the TV, isn't he, as well? We are live tonight, guys. We haven't even done the little bit of reminder or housekeeping, as some people get annoyed at me saying. Just a reminder, if you are checking us out for the first time, please consider subscribing. We'd love to have you on board. We're over 2,500 subscribers. Loads of room for you guys here on Evermore, as Mark's just whacked that up there. And we are live as always, so get the comments. We've got a couple of regulars in there. BT's in the house. Roger is there as well. We also have got a couple of praises here. Yeah, Roger is saying massive respect to all the fans who went absolutely into coin. A phrase said there was loads of ex-players around. Do you know what was real actually to coin was our very own blue tick man, Dan Wales, was sat next to James Percini of all people, mate, which was absolutely sensational, wasn't it, mate? So there was some great scenes, Mark, before the game, though, wasn't there? It was just absolutely great. It really was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just saw the hordes everywhere you went. It was all black and white from the moment the weekend started. I think as somebody put, not a red shirt in sight for days. So, but yeah, I mean, we'll come to the game, but it's just. It was, yeah. I mean, I can't go with those scenes at Trafalgar Square are something else, and there were the scenes at the Green Man, on the train, at the station. It was just everywhere. It was just ridiculous. I mean, London became Newcastle, didn't it?
Perfect segue into this wonderful man right here, Darren Eales. I mean, what an absolute fucking legend this bloke is. I mean, he was obviously outside of the Green Man, like you say. They were doing a bit of a fundraising thing, I think, Mark, went for War Flags, and he's on the mic, and he's singing bloody Bruno in the middle, and a little bit of shithousery as well from Eric Ten Hag's annoying tag as well, mate, wasn't it? Bloody
I did like that. I love that line. I love that. Let's go and annoy them. Yeah, I mean, it didn't happen, but you just like that, and I think that was it. Just again, it's getting that. A little bit of a link back, isn't it, between club and fans? You don't want part of us is hesitant in it because we saw that with Ashley when he was, he jumps in the crowd and he was lauded for being in the crowd with the fans stuff. I don't think we get to that level, but I think just getting involved, having fun, just enjoy your time at the club, enjoy owning and running the club. And spend some time with the fans and like I say, have some fun with it. Just enjoy it. It's what it's all about. At the end of the day, football is there to be enjoyed. Yes, it is for a lot of clubs. It's a business. Just go and enjoy it. It's what it has to be. The fans are there enjoying it. Just get involved.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the owners definitely were enjoying the day. I think as much as the fans were as well. It was even inviting the ex-players there. I thought was a lovely touch as well. I think I saw, was it Chris Kamara said Andy Carroll was sitting next to Andy Carroll in the crowd, and I think Dwight Gale was kicking around, and Carl Darlow was sniffing about. So there was loads and loads of kind of current and very recently ex-players who were actually at the game as well, because obviously the club wanted them to be part of it as well, mate, which I thought was brilliant. It's a real touch of class by the new owners. But let's get into the game, Mark. I think all the good things and the positive things are about to disappear a little bit. I think as sadly, we're going to try not to be too negative, because listen, it's a hell of an achievement to get to a cup final, and let's make no bones about that. The lads have done brilliant to get to a cup final. We've been shit in a cup for years. So to get to a cup final is a massive achievement in itself. So that cannot go understated. But it's a bit disappointing that, we almost felt like the stars were aligning and, something was going to happen for Newcastle this year. But it just didn't quite happen. So we're going to just have a look at the lineup first, and then just to remind you of who started. Obviously, the big news
In
was having
fairness,
Bruno.
if you don't know who started, what I mean, you probably had too much to drink. To be fair,
Well,
you might
mate,
not have realised. But anyway,
you don't even remember what was going on. You don't even remember James Corden was there. But just a little reminder.
as long as he wasn't playing.
He wasn't playing. To be fair, I don't know if he would have got his hand to Rashford's shot. He might have got his left tit to it. Could just flung that out there and saved that. To be fair, sorry mate. That's terrible, isn't it? Fat shaming the poor bloke. So this was the lineup. This was the lineup. It was obviously the strongest lineup that we could come up with. Obviously, Nick Pope's suspension. It was Loris Karius. His time. The media were desperate for him to have a mare. Horrible bastards that they are. Bruno was back in the middle. The big call for me, Mark, was who was up front, and then obviously Eddie went for Callum Wilson and left Isak on the bench. In hindsight, not the right decision, mate. What do you think?
I mean, we saw the impact that Isak had in the second half, didn't we? And it was just he did so much more than Callum Wilson. And look, I've been Callum Wilson's biggest fan. I think he's been tremendous, but he's just fallen off the edge of a cliff.
Massively.
There was that moment in the first half where it was at Longstaff put the ball across the 6-yard box. Where's your centre forward? I'm sorry, if you're centre forward, you're begging to be gambling in that area, to get a touch on the ball, and there was no movement from him in that regard at all. Yeah. There was only one place that ball could go, and you have to gamble as a centre forward. And there's been just a lack of stuff like that from him. He doesn't offer anything in the build-up play. He looks done. Honestly,
for a game like that, Mark, he looks done. For a game like that, if you're playing against maybe, with all due respect, a mid-table side, bottom and a half table side, Wilson still has that ability to get in behind. You look at the West Ham game. West Ham weren't great. Yeah, Rice grabbed the game by the nuts after that, but he found space in behind them quite easily. He ain't going to find that space at Manchester United, Liverpool, City. He's not going to find that space.
Isak will. Two World Cup winning centre backs, and Casemiro sitting in that midfield. You're not going to find that level of space.
Yeah. I agree with Sean on that one. He is becoming a real worry, and I think, to coin a phrase, is saying that virus has ruined him. He's got to be taken out the side. I mean, I think Isak offered so much more when he come on. I mean, we'll get into the goals in a minute, but I think at this point we were chasing the game. A bit unlucky for Sean to get hooked at 45 minutes. But I understand why he tried to keep Callum on, because he needed his attacking players on to try and get us back in the game. But Wilson spent more of the game trying to wind up Martinez, which he was never going to do. Martinez had his number all game. He was in his head. He was winding him up. And I just think Wilson was really poor, Mark, as you rightly say. But let's rewind a little bit. So Newcastle did start all right. I mean, I think Bruno and Joe Linton looked really up for it, didn't it, in the first 10, 15 minutes against the other two Brazilians who sat back a bit. But in hindsight, I think we played right in the Manchester United's hands. I think they were expecting that intensity right from the jump, weren't they, mate?
I think Ten Hag got his tactics absolutely spot on. You can say what I think Peter said what we want about the comments pre-game. It's kind of goaded Newcastle into playing the way that they've played. But
we always start like that, though. We always start like that against, we did against Liverpool the week before.
Yeah, but I think Manchester United over the entire game played it perfectly. They sat with pretty much Fernandes sitting in an area that Bruno wanted to operate. They then sat with Fred and Casemiro in sort of those spaces that then Joe Linton and Longstaff wanted to operate. He then changed things as Newcastle started to change the way that they played, and they brought Burn in slightly narrower to accommodate Trippier being further forward so as not to get caught out by Manchester United's attack. So Ten Hag, I think, then reacted and brought his wide players in slightly narrow. So you saw Anthony's place slightly closer to the middle. Rashford was making those sort of runs in towards the centre of the pitch, and it sort of stopped the ability of Newcastle being able to play through. There was later on where sort of Burn makes that move, sort of when he's playing slightly narrower, the ball to Joe Linton or whoever's on that left-hand side is there, but you bring Rashford in off, Anthony in off their right-hand side. It just blocks that passing lane. There's just little things like that, little tweaks where I think on the day, Man U got it absolutely spot on in that regard. They almost just said to Newcastle, right, you keep the ball, you can come and attack us. We know
that's exactly what they did,
just how good we can be, and we know we've got the quality going forward to get in behind your midfield three, and then you're in trouble because when you, as we saw with the second goal, once you've got past that line, it was open for them to then counter like that. And
we'll come to the second goal.
Yeah.
I know you're a Man United fan. You're getting excited about that. I'm only joking.
Don't start this again.
but you're right. I think that kind of bright start with Bruno in particular. He was trying to get the ball. He was trying to make things happen. He has that chance when he breaks in the box. And to be fair, Fred gets a lot of flack, but it was a brilliant bit of play by Fred to block him when Bruno was coming in, because that looked like he was going to smash out in the back of the net. And I think they absorbed that really well from that big game they had against Barca. They were conserving their energy, I think, and we played into that, and that intensity that we started to fade a little bit, and they started to grow into the game. So we'll get into the first goal, Mark, straight away. It's a bit of a soft free kick, but I think Rashford goads Bruno into it. He knows he's going to get a shoulder charge. He knows he's going to make the most of it. The referee was poor, I thought, most of the game. He didn't give us a great deal. He blows up for the free kick. But the free kick, we've got to do better, Mark. You got some stills here of it. We've got to do better on this free kick, man. Now, I think it's offside personally. We kind of sort of agree and disagree on this, but I think it's offside, but we have to do better on this free kick, mate.
Yeah, I think defensively on that free kick, Casemiro gets far too much time to get in between Botman and Shaw. The free kick, I think, yeah, it's a free kick. If you flip it around, if that's the other way, you're screaming that's a free kick. I think you can't argue that. I do think the referee was poor, but he got that right. I thought the ball in from Luke Shaw was excellent, but I do think that defensively you have to do better. On the offside, look, Callum Wilson's foot being off the ground is a little bit deceptive because it looks probably further back than it actually is. Yeah. To me, the issue I have with this whole part was it's Diego Dallo on the back. Now he's in an obvious offside position.
Right in the top corner.
Yeah. So he's in an obvious offside position. Now he's not affecting the play as such because the ball gets to Casemiro, who heads it in. However, he is blocking Dan Burns running to that area of the field. Now, to me, that then makes him active because he's actively stopping somebody attempt to get into an area where he could defend the ball. So, surely to God, we've seen it before and against Manchester United in the past, where players have been pulled up for being offside for those sort of blocking tactics. Now, to me, he's in an offside position at the point in which the ball's played. The Wilson, the line is so tight. The
high line, isn't it? It's a high line, really, mate. On a free kick.
But that line of the offside is so thin. It's the thinness of a piece of paper. The difference between Casemiro's foot or shoulder and Wilson's foot, it's so tight, and it's just frustrating. I think Casemiro is kept onside by Wilson, barely. Although there's an argument to suggest that Casemiro's shoulder is ahead, and have they looked at that properly?
But how many times do you see strikers making those runs? Remember, Isak's goal got disallowed at Anfield because his shoulder, when he leaned, they said was deemed to be offside, but that's not offside. I think to coin saying it there, he's on the penalty spot line and the ball has been set into that area, so he's offside. Surely, I tend to agree with that. Mate. He looks like he's heading towards. He's very close to it, isn't he?
It's so tight. For the two that are involved, I think because when you look at the line zoomed in at the bottom, you can see the little sort of green line that just nips up to Callum Wilson's foot, and it's so. It's literally this. It cannot be any more than half half a centimetre difference.
Do you agree with that? I think that's a bit harsh. I don't think he's got much of a chance with this because his defences really let him down. For me, Shaw has to do better with it. Shaw looks a bit 6s and 7s. He's watching a ball. He doesn't realise Casemiro's right on his arse. And I don't think Karius can do anything with that. I think Pope would have conceded that, I think.
I don't think any goalkeeper is going to get too close to that. I do think defensively, Botman and Shaw have to be more switched on to the fact that Casemiro's in between them. They've got to be talking. They've got to be talking. You've got to know that somebody's there and be able to defend that better. He's allowed too much time, too much space to get a free header in. Yes, Davy VAR is absolute bollocks anyway.
VAR is absolute nuts. Yeah,
really you'll never get a disagreement on that one. But it's just it's so tight. But to me,
I agree with BT. We should have dropped deeper. I think I agree with BT. I think we should have dropped a bit deeper.
I think we're talking about this in the coverage though, and that high line works most of the time, and that's why teams do it, because it means that there's too much space in between where the free kick is and where the goal is. So you don't often get that chance to score like that. But when it works, I mean, or when it doesn't work as the defensive unit, it does look shit. I mean, it really does.
Sorry, when you said it works most of the time, I just had Anchorman playing in my head with the Sex Panther cologne there.
60% of the time it works all the time, yeah.
I know we're trying to be serious about the goal, but I couldn't stop giggling there. But so I mean, that was disappointing. That took the wind out of our sails quite a bit. I think that really turned the intensity right down, because that wasn't part of the script, was it? And you could see the players a bit rattled by it. And then, I mean, the second one comes. I mean, I think we did try and get back into it. I think Maxi has a couple of little, hip movements, and he was really having Dalot on toast, wasn't he? And
then Dalot gets Dalot in the box where he goes past him. It was, I mean, that is sensational from Maxi.
That's him at his best, though, isn't it? That's him at his very best. But I think
just the finish lacking.
Exactly, but like most of our players, unfortunately, they do all the hard stuff, then they don't have the end product. But I think he gets Dalot booked. And again, it's good management by Ten Hag, as we said, hooking him off for Wan-Bissaka. But the second goal, me and you kind of had a bit of I wouldn't say a disagreement on this, but my take on
had an argument about it.
Well, I was trying to dumb it down there. My second goal, but my opinion on the second goal is I watched it back a couple of times, and for me, it's a breakdown of shape and it's a breakdown of discipline as well. Yes, it's a lovely flick from Rashford to start the move, and I know you want to talk about that in a bit more detail. But for the second goal, Longstaff doesn't track Weghorst's run, and Bruno is close as well to Weghorst, and none of them make a move to go over, none of them make a move to go to Rashford. Weghorst has about 6 touches with nobody in his face, which I'm very, very surprised at. And then Shaw stuck between, does he stay or does he go? Does he block Weghorst's shot? Or does he leave his man? And he kind of doesn't know what to do, to the point where he eventually goes, right, fuck it, I'm going. And Rashford finds that gap, gets in that gap. Botman switches on and goes, oh shit, goes to get him. And then the shot flicks off Botman's foot. And going on to Karius, like, I'll let you have your bit on this in a minute, but going on to Karius, I don't think Karius had a bad game, before anybody thinks I'm saying this.
It was brilliant.
But yeah, for somebody who hasn't played for so long, but here is my point. A keeper who has played more football in the last 2-3 years gets his left hand up a little bit quicker than that, in my opinion. That might be being harsh, but I think his left hand was a bit slow, and I think that's only because of his lack of match sharpness. But that was my take on the second goal, mate. Over to you. You're shaking your head. I've never seen you disagree so much with me in your whole life, mate.
In terms of the goal, the flick from Rashford takes out 3 players. It takes out Trippier, it takes out Longstaff, and it takes out Bruno in an instant. There's not an awful lot you can do about that. At that point, they're massively on the defensive. They're tracking from behind those players. Now, Rashford goes from that flick and gets in front of him. I think that's the disappointing one from that run. Shaw is in completely. He's absolutely in 2 minds, and I think in essence he does the only thing that he can do. If he steps out too early,
he waits. Yeah,
he has to wait for as long as possible to try and get reinforcements there to help him. Because if he steps out too early, as Rashford's coming down the right hand side of Weghorst, if he steps out, Weghorst knocks the ball slightly to the right, and Rashford's in on goal 1-on-1, and it probably ends up being a goal anyway. Trippier's coming in from the left-hand side. He tracks the run of Luke Shaw, and then as he gets to the point where Luke Shaw is no longer a threat at that point, he then starts to curl his run in to try and defend the goal, and he's just getting to the point of passing Botman and Rashford when Rashford shoots. It's one of those where that touch from Rashford, just like I say, it takes out 3 players, and it's just really unfortunate that happens. I don't think Shaw can do anything else. I think he does the right thing. It doesn't look great because it allows Weghorst to run towards the goal, but he doesn't really have another option. With Karius, I'm sorry, no. I'm not sure. That ball is so close to him when it takes the deflection, and that ball's going wide. And he's defending low. He's defending low where the ball was going, even though it was going wide. It then flicks up off Botman from so close to him. I'm not sure there's another goalkeeper in the world that would save that. They might get close, but I don't think they save it.
I think BT's been a bit harsh there. If Pope's in goal, he would have to. I think Pope's hands up quicker because he's sharper. I'm not having to go at Karius. I'm just saying he's rusty. No. He's rusty. To change his shape, to change his position that quickly as a keeper, it's like sprinting as a player. That's what I'm saying.
But you know yourself, if something goes that quickly and the deflection is so close, you don't, as a goalkeeper, you cannot get your hands up that quickly. And he does so well to get his hand up to it. I love Nick Pope. I really do. But I can't. I don't think he saves it. He might get a little closer because of the fact that he's played more games. But I just don't think he can. Yeah. I don't think Karius can do any more at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not having to go at Karius. I think he did a lot better. Certainly, in the media were trying to paint him out to be, they're painting him out to be some kind of fucking knacker or something like that. But he's a good goalkeeper, and he made some really good saves.
We normally invoke the bloke from Wolves End, don't we? What's his name?
Barry the taxi driver.
Barry the taxi driver. It's not like they've gone out and signed Barry the taxi driver from Wolves End.
To be fair, Barry's a cracking shot stopper, mate. In all fairness, you know what I mean. He gets his hand to everything, does Barry. But yeah, I think Karius was. I'm just trying to pull up if I can a screenshot of the shape that we were just talking about there. So just I suppose to kind of go back to illustrate it there. It's the long staff. Lack of movement for me that I think if he's a bit further back, if he's 5-10 yards further back, if Bruno's 10 yards further back, but as you say, Rashford's taking them all out with that flick, and is what you're trying to say.
But it's for me at that point, it's tracking the Rashford run. So it's not about Weghorst at this point. It's from that point at which when Rashford plays the ball, it takes those two out of the game. But then I guess there's the whether it's just pace. And they just can't keep up. I mean, Rashford's quick.
Could Joe Linton do better there? Joe Linton standing by the ref, he jogs back quite slowly.
No, because Joe Linton's out of that phase of the game at that point. He's in the right position because otherwise you end up with 10. You end up with 3 of your central midfielders within 10 yards of each other, and at that point you open yourself up to more problems if the ball then goes across the other side. I think Joe Linton comes back as he should to cover whatever then might occur towards the edge of the box. I don't think you can hold anything on him at that point. I just think it's.
I think the bangers makes a really good point. We spent a lot of time talking about the issues with the goal. I think what worried me a bit, certainly the second goal, was it was like Liverpool copy and paste. We switch off. It's a quick bit of movement. We haven't quite got our shit together. We've been done by a relatively. I wouldn't say, but it's a bit harsh to Rashford to say relatively simple ball because it's something out of nothing. It's a bit of quality that's done you. Whereas Liverpool, it was more just a straight ball over. But I think the bangers makes a really good point. Again, we were toothless up front, Mark. We just didn't have anything really. I think Maxi probably should feel a bit unlucky to not be kept on longer than Miggy. I thought Miggy was headless personally. I don't know what your take on was. Miggy looked like the Miggy of old, I thought, just running around like a dog chasing a ball at the park. He didn't seem to have any real purpose with the running. I was quite disappointed with Miggy's performance.
I've said that. Even when Miggy was playing well, there is still that part of me that says at some point this will start to come to an end. But he's so easy to defend against, and again, Manchester United did it very well. You keep him on his right foot most of the time, and he can't hurt you.
He's done.
And he showed every time. Well, doesn't matter what area of the pitch he came to. When he dropped deeper later on in the game to play in a sort of a slightly deeper role, it's all on his left. He cannot play the ball with his right foot. Even the simple pass that you should just be able to make as a Premier League footballer, as a professional footballer, if you can't pass a ball 5 yards with your right foot when you're left-footed, there's something seriously wrong. He works so hard for the team, and he's done so much this season. He's the top scorer for the season, but there's a severe lack of quality in that area from him, and it showed. And when you are so one-dimensional, you are so easy to defend against.
That's exactly
when the team's flying. It doesn't look so bad. And that's exactly what I think is what's happened. When the team was flying pre-World Cup and in the Leicester game, everything was coming off because the rest of the team, were playing so well to put them in good positions. As soon as it comes down to that play down the right-hand side, and you know exactly what's going to happen. He's going to get down the right, he's going to cut back, he's going to play it to Trippier every single time. Because even when he gets into the position, just to hit one across, you watch Maxi from the left. Granted, he completely fucked one up when he went to play the ball with his left foot, kicked it with his right, and went up for a goal kick.
Yeah, I felt a bit sorry from there because he was doing really well up until that point. It was just one of them things.
Those things happen. We've seen that from some of the greatest footballers in the world. That's happened
Jesus. Absolutely, man.
But you put any player that plays on the left or the right in most of the top sides, if they're inverted wingers. If they end up going down the wrong side, what Grealish at Man City, for example, yes, his natural want is to come inside and use his right. But if he's forced down the left, he'll put a ball in. Miggy won't. And I just think that's where it starts to become, the attack is so one-dimensional. I talked about Miggy being one-dimensional. It's pretty much the attack in that regard is such an easy thing now to defend against because teams have watched it, teams have studied it, and they can block off those passing lanes. And if Bruno isn't completely at 100% and he's not having a 9 out of 10 game, there's very little else that comes out of that side. It is frustrating because the attacking ability is there in terms of Wilson for his finishing and definitely from Isak and from Maxi. But it's just not happening. And I think it's just, there has to be a switch of something. I really do.
Well, I have left this up because you've struggled to breathe because you're on one. I was going to say, you're doing it me tonight. You're taking over, mate. I love it. More of this from you. So attacking troubles is obviously what we're talking about. And Mark's covered quite a lot of them there. So don't worry, we'll keep talking about it. But
we'll move on.
No, we won't move on. We've still got more to talk about there. We've got a few comments in from the guys about the wingers and stuff. But the biggest issue, Mark, I think sums up what you just said there. Looking at the stats. So we had 62% possession. So we had a lot of the ball, a lot of passing. Passing accuracy was 79%. 15 shots and 2 on target against Manchester United's 14 and 10 on target. Tells everything, the story you need to know about what the problems are here. We couldn't play Anthony Gordon in this game, which I think was disappointing because I think he would have gave us something. Some of the guys are talking about, stop playing inverted wingers. I think Sean's saying their wingers are allowed to swap. We never do it.
I've said this for weeks.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to happen. And I agree with you. I think we are running out of options. I think as well, Di will be swearing at me wherever he is. Playing Dan Burn at left back throws the team out of kilt a little bit because we have nothing down the left-hand side. Yes, when Maxi's there, you can't have a left back bombing on because we'll be screwed going back the other way. But now Matty Target is back to fitness. I just wonder whether we might see Matty Target coming in with maybe a Gordon out on that side potentially. I personally think Miggy needs a rest because I think he's fucked. I think he's knackered. Even though he's got all the energy in the world, I think he needs a rest. He needs to be coming out the team and let Gordon have a bit of a game. I think Maxi did enough in that game to start against City. I think it would be harsh to drop him. But I think the biggest thing, Mark, and we said it before the game, but for me, 100% Alexander Isak has to start up front now. Pretty much every game until said time he can't.
Absolutely agree. Come back to that point about Byrne, though. I think part of the problem, and I think part of the reason why Dan Byrne plays and will probably remain in that position is the fact that Trippier is no longer a defender. If you look,
he's like a hybrid, isn't he, Trippier? Yeah. He's
Trippier's
like Trent. He's like what Trent used to be.
So far forward.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and he has to, because of the issue with Miggy, because of the fact that to get a ball in from that right-hand side, Trippier either has to sit 10 yards from Miggy for the knockback or to overlap him. He has to play high. And then the problem is that you don't have anybody to cover because you don't have a natural six. Or Bruno's being asked, rephrase that. So Bruno's almost playing two roles. And I put this in our chat earlier. Bruno's almost playing a 6 and an 8 in one because he's trying to be that
midfielder.
But he's trying to be that linchpin in the middle where we looked at the passing networks before where he sits in the middle. But he's trying to play further forward. So that when Trippier goes, if you look at Man City's, for example, when you see their fullbacks high on either side, Rodri sits. So Rodri almost sits in between or as one of the centre backs in that regard. You don't have that. Now, if you can have somebody that will sit and cover as a 6 or PK's 4, we'll call it, that comes in and sits in that back, then 3, Sharon Botman can then move slightly wider to cover those wider areas so that it frees Trippier up to be further forward and there's not so much of an issue. Because you don't have that, it's then really it's such an unbalanced side and you don't have the same from the left-hand side. But Byrne is coming across to play in that 3 where you would not naturally want a defensive midfielder to be. You then don't have the same attacking threat or the same ability to then switch the ball to the left-hand side because Byrne's not there. If your other fullback is playing slightly higher, around around the sort of halfway line or slightly advanced of that, you've then got the ability to then switch the ball quickly to then go down the other side. But because Byrne's having to cover, he's not able to do that. He's not a fullback anyway, but you don't have the ability to be able to switch the ball like that. So that the bulk of the attack is always down that right-hand side.
So here's a question. It might be ruled out straight away. Let us know in the comments if you guys agree or disagree. But if you're going to keep Byrne aside, and as you rightly say, Trippier's not really a right back anymore. He's further at the park. Do you go 3 at the back with 2 wing backs or wingers further up with maybe Trippier one side and do you go Miggy the other with his left foot on a natural left side? Do you do that and try that? With a back 3, them 2 up, then your midfield, then Isak with Maxi off him or something.
I get the idea, but I think you lose a lot of the ability of Bruno if you start to do that, because then the central areas are possibly too crowded. But you also then, what do you then sacrifice forward? Do you play a 2? Do you play?
Would you play ASM in the free role behind Isak? And let them two just let them
Possibly.
two just. Sorry, I knew someone would come in with it. No, not in a Steve Bruce style, Roger. Don't you dare bacon me up, mate. Don't you dare bacon me up. But yeah, I just think that we seem to be. I wouldn't say sacrificing to shoehorn Byrne in at left back. I'm not trying to blame Byrne. I think he had an all right game, apart from when he let Anthony take the piss. I love Joe Linton. Yeah, Joe Linton hoofing Anthony was the highlight of the game for me, by the way. Sorry to cut across you there. That was the best part of Joe Linton's game.
Dan Byrne should have done that a lot earlier.
Dan Byrne should have laced him. I think he was trying to be a bit too composed as a defender. That's what I mean about Byrne. Remember that tackle he put on Jared Bowen? I want to see more of that from Byrne. You're not seeing enough of that.
He did one later on where he completely, I can't remember who it was. He completely wiped it. It was a great tackle. But that's what you want. You want it just Andy Griffin-esque. First 5 minutes of the game, put him in the bottom part of the stand. Welcome to the game. Now try and get past
Too right. Just fucking nail him straight away. I mean, that one for Anthony. I mean, I was watching that and I said, shout out to Tapley when we were kids. I texted him and said I'd have fucking went right through the back of him if he'd done that to my fullback. And I would have done. And then Joe Linton comes steaming in and did exactly what I would have wanted to do, which was brilliant. But BT saying we'll leave Shaw and Botman at the back unless it's a corner. That's very true. Davey saying Trips plays more like Terry Hibber used to. Yeah, I suppose you might be right. Mark Fleming is saying, look where we were this last year. And that's been said a lot, right? And you can't dismiss it. But the way we've played this season, we've got to put those thoughts of relegation fights behind us because we're not there this season. We're shooting in different targets. But I don't think Eddie Howe thought he was going to finish fifth and get to a cup final at the start of the season. I think he would have loved to have done. But
was the shooting a different target a reference to Mark's avatar?
It possibly would have been, yeah. Just it almost kind of hypnotized me, a bit like the snake from the Jungle Book with the fucking eyes. I just went, and I was at the target there. But he does agree that Callum Wilson is looking past it, Mark. But sorry, Matt, I could have crossed you, but I think you're right. The change of that formation. I'm just trying to think if you're going to insist on having Byrne in the team, and he's not a left back, and he's not going to give you any outlet on the left hand side like Trippier's giving you on the right. We are going to be so one-dimensional, as you said. Everything's going to go on the right because Miggy can't cross the ball. If you play Gordon, can Gordon cross the ball? Because the little flashes that he's put a couple of lovely passes through Wilson. He's fluffed them, but he's put some lovely through balls through. So could Anthony Gordon put a ball in, and then Trippier doesn't have to constantly get up there to be that ball outlet to do that, and he doesn't get caught short.
I guess this is probably a topic for the Wednesday. But
possibly,
my feeling is that as you start to get towards the end of the season, I think you start to see possibly a change in formation, and you start to see, because I think inevitably, I don't think this 4-3-3 will work long term. It's worked. Let's be fair. That since Eddie Howe's come in, that this 4-3-3 formation has worked brilliantly. But I think you're starting to see now where I think he has to evolve from that. I agree with the comments earlier on that were saying about the inverted wingers. The inverted wingers now aren't working. So something else has to be done. And I've said this for weeks. Swap them over. At least for 10, 15, 20 minutes during a game. Swap Miggy onto the left and Maxi onto the right, or whoever. Just give a bit of a change. Just a different look for the defenders to go, right, we have to defend against something different now. We're not used to this. And then swap them back. Well, just as they're getting to grips with that, you play a bit more fluid in those areas. But I do think as this season now progresses, you may start to see this develop into more of a 4-2-3-1 with two.
Do you think that's Bruno and Joe? Is that Bruno and Joe in the two? In the middle?
Probably. I think that's probably...
They're the best two. I
think it's probably harsh on Longstaff. I think he's the one that misses out because I think he's been incredibly good this season. But I also think you could play Bruno and Sean in that middle too, and play Joe Linton just as the one in front of them, being the one that then gets into the box. He can do that. Yeah. So I think there's the potential to do that too. He can also play down the left. He can also go and play through the middle, sort of further forward if you want him to, not as an out-and-out striker, but he could certainly play that role in and around. If you are doing this fluid movement, that he could then get into those areas. To think that, and I probably see that being the way that Newcastle's team develops. If you bring in another sort of defensive-minded midfielder, that's certainly one. Play him and Bruno together.
Yeah. On that point, T-Dog's smashed it in there. We'll probably get stuck into it Wednesday, but T-Dog spent the time typing the comments, so we always read it out, mate. We appreciate the comments. So just you take that, Mark, then I'll give my take, and it gives me time to think. That's how I play the game. So let's say we sign the number 6 to free up the left back, and Bruno plays higher up. Who are you taking out of the team to accommodate him? Who are you taking out to fit in this number 6 that's going to clean everything up? Who are you taking out of that midfield?
Well, I think of the two at the moment, you're probably talking about Sean.
I would say so at the minute, which is harsh, but that's what happens when you upgrade. When you upgrade,
I think if you are going to upgrade in that area, I think that's probably the way to go. I think Joe Linton gives you a little bit more further forward. He gives you a little bit more variety going forward. Don't get me wrong, I think Sean Longstaff has been exceptional this season. I think he's been very, very good. And as JJ's put in the comments there, he can play further forward. He's done it before. Can he do that longer term? Could he give you that? This is it. I think if you... I
don't think he's clinical enough to play there. There was, apart from the Southampton game, he smashed in 2 goals. Maybe he's worked on that. So.
Possibly, but you could say the same about Joe Linton, to be fair. But I think just Joe Linton's variety of positions that he can play well in, and we've seen that when him and Willock have swapped over. And there's another one. Does Willock become that 10? Does he become that player in behind the?
I think Willock could do the better job there because we know he can get goals. We've seen Willock do that, and I think in that gap in behind, certainly with Isak, the way Isak plays. Think about the Southampton game. Even look at some of the way he played when he came on. He likes to come deep and get it. He likes to run at players, commit them, take it wide, and cut it across the box. We need an attacking midfielder who can arrive in the box on that penalty spot and put it away. And that's exactly what Joe Willock was when we first signed him.
Yeah.
So you could play Joe Willock in that attacking midfield berth and then have Bruno in his hybrid role and Joe Linton. The problem is Joe lacks the discipline to go back, doesn't he? He's got the legs and the energy, but he won't stay back. He'll get the ball and he'll try and drive up the park. And if he loses it, and you've got Willock up at number 10 and Bruno's had a wander up and Joe Linton's had a wander up, we leave ourselves exposed, don't we? So you need that 6.
That's part of the problem. I know you were putting in teams in the chat earlier on where you had a midfield team of Bruno around Maddison and Joe Linton. I think that and I think the comment back was right. I think that would leave you massively overexposed because it
wasn't right. It was a shit comment back, but I'm not going to get into that.
But I mean, it's those sort of ideas about if you were still going to go for these players, where do you play them?
It's different teams, though, isn't it? Different teams.
Yeah.
If you're playing against a weak team where Newcastle should be dominating, you could play that midfield. Against someone like a Wolves at home, right? You could play that midfield and just go at Wolves and just hammer them into the ground. If you're playing against City, Liverpool, Man United, you need that 6 to pull you back and sweep up in front of your back 4. But if you're going to be on the front foot dominating games, you've got to be able to change it around, but we haven't got the depth in the squad to do it.
You're not going to do a Southgate and play 2 holding midfielders against Panama, are you? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I get that. If you're playing bottom of the league, you're not going to want to play two players that are going to sit in front of the back 4. You're going to want somebody a little bit more inventive and getting further forward.
Yeah.
Going back to Willock as well. Again, Willock gives you the variety where he can play through the middle. He can play out left as well. So he gives you and. Defensively, he can then drop into a midfield 3.
And he can work hard.
So he can do that.
Yeah, Willock can do everything really, but you've got to try and pick where you want to play. That's a good point by Stu. We were talking about this, weren't we? I think, on Wednesday, I think hopefully Audie's going to be on if he's recovered from his Wembley hangover. And he's got a serious point to make about this, Stu. So make sure you tune in on Wednesday at 7:00. But we have been poor, haven't we, from corners and free kicks and. Trippier's on the mark all the time, not to stamp on the thunder for Wednesday. It's a bit alarming that there's nobody else in the squad that can take it on. There's one player who we've let go, and I think because of his longevity at the club, he'd have grabbed the ball off Trippier by now for a corner, and it's John Joe Shelvey. He'd have said to Trippier, I'll take the next one. And Shelvey was almost given that respect because they know how good he was with his delivery. So if Trippier was struggling a bit, like he had been last season, John Joe would step up and do the free kick against Leeds or take a corner or whatever. But we don't seem to have a player brave enough to take the ball off Trippier now or believe in that quality enough to do it.
I think Trippier's delivery for weeks has been
awful.
In the main, quite poor. He's but then again, you're right. There's nobody else to take the ball. Gordon maybe will come in and can then potentially start to take some of that mantle off him. And give you a little bit of variety. It's variety of play. When it's the same ball time and time and time again, you become so easy to defend against. And Trippier's delivery is generally in the same place. Whether it's from the right or the left, you're going to see the same sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So you need to mix it up. You need to start playing. To get. If Target's playing, for example, Target can hit a good dead ball. He can take a corner. Get them whipping in from the right-hand side. As Trippier's whipping them in from the left-hand side. Just change things up a little bit. Give the defending team a look that they've not seen before. Because you become, like I said, you just become very, very easy to defend against. And when the delivery's poor as well, it just makes it look even worse.
Yeah. I think we are definitely becoming predictable to block out. T-Dog saying that he'd like to see Eddie Howe experiment and try some of the formations that we've just been talking about there. BT says the squad depth is horrendous. So go on, sorry, mate, go on. You take the T-Dog one first, then we'll get
just the T-Dog one. Look, I think experimenting's good, but you don't want to be the detriment of where you actually finish in the league. I get the premise behind it, but could that then cost you a Europa League place? Well, and that's a progression level, and that then brings in a better caliber of player. If you finish outside of the European places, do you then miss out on some of those targets you might have got? If you can experiment to a point, so that you're not doing too much of a change, and I'm not saying the obvious one is when teams are really strong. No, just play the kids. We're not at that level.
No.
In talking about it,
we haven't got any
but
kids.
I get the point. But you can experiment to a point, so a slightly different formation, playing the wingers on the right side rather than the inverted.
Or playing Gordon as a 10 or Maxi in a free role or whatever.
And play that and move them around, give them that fluidity in attack. And even Isak, to that point, you can move your centre forward. I mean, we've seen Isak can quite comfortably play right or left. He's done it in games this season. So you can move them all around. That I get, that level of experimentation. Yes, I would agree with that. Not too much, because I think then that leads you into a path of losing out on the position you actually deserve from the season.
Yeah, but on BT's point there, I'll take this one. The squad depth is horrendous. Half of the bench is championship at best, and these are the differences. Yeah, when you go through it, that's exactly what it is. BT, I was saying to Mark as well before we came on, the difference between being there, like we are this season, and staying there every season. Liverpool and Manchester United have showed us that in the last two games. We lack that extra bit of quality that just gets you to that position and gets you over the line in games like that. We don't have it. And invariably, we don't have any plan Bs or Cs off the bench. You're totally right, BT. When Matt Ritchie's coming on and Elliot Anderson's coming on, you're thinking, where the fuck do you go from that? You know what I mean? We haven't got enough quality to come off the bench to affect the game. That's the difference.
When one of your first substitutions is Jacob Murphy coming off the bench every week.
He came close, by the way. What a strike that was, by the way.
The first one was horrendous. The one that he lashed about 50 yards over the bar. But the second one was close.
I heard the first one he hit Big Ben. It's knocked the fucking minute hand off, I think. It's wobbling a little bit, the first one. But yeah, you're right. That is a serious lack of quality compared to what... But Manchester United have had seasons after seasons of hundreds of millions spent. We spent a couple of 100 million and bought, 5-6 key players who have totally transformed our squad. In the summer, I think we go again. I think we do. I think we go big. I think there's at least 2 or 3 big players we're going to bring in. And we'll have to, mate, in the summer. This is going to be more for Wednesday, but we'll have to bring in quality if we're going to not just get to these games, Mark, but actually have a chance of winning these games. Those quality players have to be there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think Roger's got in there. Man U's squad is approximately 300 million more than those. Well, exactly. Nearly 100 million that is Harry Maguire, don't forget. So,
fucking hell. Honestly, I've seen modern art sculptures that are a better value for money than that fucking bloke. Honestly, and quicker.
But look, I think there's value in what you've done so far. In that you've competed. You played in parts very well. And I think Eddie Howe touched on this. In between the boxes, Newcastle were excellent. And T-Dog's bang on there. There is value in terms of the experimentation learned for next season. There is value there. But I think there's what you can take from the game is a lot of positive. In between the two boxes, I thought they were excellent. As Eddie Howe said as well, the 2 areas that let him down was in attack and that final part of defending. That's
he
where
did say that's been the case for a while now. So he knows it's there. He knows the problems are there.
But my frustration in that, if you know that there's a problem in those cards, do something different.
Fix it. Do something.
Maybe it's not fix it, but at least try. At least
try and roll the dice. Do something different.
Yeah, and I think there are points in games where he's done that. I think there's a comment in there about the Fulham game about playing Isak in that 10 role. I think that there's signs in there,
and he scored the winner.
Do it earlier. Don't do this after 80 minutes. Do it after, if it's not worked. A bit like the substitution at half time. That's fine. That's a perfect example of trying to do things and trying to to tactically change a game. But that's the first time I've seen that, where you've brought a player off, not
That
because
early.
he played badly, but just trying to change the way that has to happen more often. But then you've
We
got
had nothing to lose at that point, I think.
No,
We had nothing
exactly.
to lose and everything to gain, didn't we, at that point?
But even as such as we talked about before, change your wingers, swap them over, do something a little bit different, move your midfield slightly around. Do you know what I mean? Spend more time concentrating on going down the left-hand side than going down the right. It's all these kind of things where you just got to think in-game management at that point. He's just don't stop doing the same things. But said it's difficult because in the flow of the game you get into a rhythm about how things are going, so it's difficult to change. And the way players have played so far this season, you want to continue to do the things that they've done well. But when they're not working, you have to have the ability to go to flip into plan B, C, D, and E.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need one of those as well. And one of them cannot be Jacob Murphy or Matt Ritchie. Just on Stu's comment there, I don't think Ten Hag schooled him, Stu. It's easy for us to forget. Ten Hag is an experienced manager at a much higher level of football than Eddie Howe, in all fairness to Eddie. He's managing the Champions League. He managed that great Ajax team. He's been in top level football for a long time. And I think Eddie went away and redeveloped and kind of redesigned himself, and massive credit from that. He's come back a great manager for it. I think Eddie will only get better and better and better. And, to get to the final and still be in the game. And Mark's right. Maybe needs to be a bit more brave. Maybe needs to be a bit more ruthless with some of these players and not be so loyal to them, like Callum Wilson and guys like that. When it's clear that he's not going to affect the game, he has to make a tough decision, say, right, you're not playing, or you're not. I'm not going to shoehorn you in at that position. I'm going to make a big decision and drop you. Now, I'm talking about the left back thing there. Obviously, Target being injured, influences that massively, because the wind just had to blow and Paul Dummett would break his ligaments in 90 places. So there's no point in talking about playing him there. So, well, you're fucking right. That's saying something. So I think some of that's a bit harsh, but I think Howe will learn a lot about himself at top level management this season as well. And next season, I think he'll be an even better manager. But just before we move on to Karius, a couple of comments there. PDK saying, was January a failure? For me, I don't think failure is the right word, Mark. I think missed opportunity to add to the squad in terms of if something happens, and it did happen. Obviously Pope's red card, you can't really account for that. We had the cover for it, really, but
you've got 15 senior goalkeepers at the club now. So
exactly, yeah. And you've been warming up at the weekends. But I think the big problem for me was you could have got some key players in this January window, and if the Premier League weren't willing to parlay, a bit of a Peaky Blinders reference there, if they weren't willing to parlay, you could have went to Europe, and you could have went and got yourself a really good midfielder with energy, with a bit of creativity, maybe another centre forward. You could have added to this. And then if Wilson goes off the boil like he does, you've got another option. Bruno gets suspended, you've got another option. And because we didn't, we left ourselves too short. I mean, Youri Tielemans is a perfect example, right? If we'd offered Leicester 18 million quid for Tielemans, we probably would have got him, right? The whole thing about the wage structure and all that, I'm not going to get into that, right? Sooner or later, Newcastle United, if they want to be a top 4 Premier League team and challenge for Champions League, they're going to have to pay the going rate for players. I've had this conversation so many times, I'm getting bored of it. But there's a massive opportunity in January to add quality to the squad, and we didn't take it, mate. So I do tend to agree with that. What was your take on January? And has that affected us now in this moment?
I think you're right. I think that the lack of anybody really coming in January does affect what then happens for the rest of the season. I agree with this comment from T-Dog. I do think that if spending too much in the January then jeopardizes
what you in the summer. I get it.
And you've got to remember that Newcastle is still playing under this black flag of FFP. It's not affecting them as yet, but they've got to be careful because their commercial revenues aren't there yet. Because their commercial revenues have been so fucking dire under Ashley, it's really left them in the hole to be able to then take that jump quickly. So if their long-term plan was to try and hold on to what they have, or to have a minimum level of where they drop to. So say they anticipated maybe finishing, they will attempt to stay where they were in the top 4, but 6 would be a reasonable expectation based on the way that they've started the season. They can then move on in the summer and they can spend a lot more money to be able to take that next step. And I get that argument. But when you allow, and I said this at the time, was allowing Shelvey to go without bringing anybody else in a mistake. Now, Great, Shelvey's not your long-term answer. He's not going to play another 10 games for the club. But when you then see within minutes, Bruno gets suspended.
Yeah.
And you go, well, all it takes
Will it gets injured?
I was just going to say that. All it takes now is another to get injured, and all of a sudden you're very, very light in midfield. You then suddenly, without Bruno and Willock, in a midfield that's been a midfield 3 pretty much throughout the season, it's very difficult to then change that and keep the momentum going when you can't just plug in another player. You're then having to reinvent what you've done by bringing Joe Linton back into a 2 at that point, something that he's never done. You're asking Longstaff to pretty much be the Bruno of that.
That's a big ask,
side. And that's a big ask for
and he's done so well. Sean's done so well. But can't say that.
And to be fair, he's done a good job. But when you look at the way that Newcastle have played in those last few games, and it was very telling when we looked at the passing networks, and I'll go back to that, and you see that hub from Bruno where it goes everywhere, and the passing going to every player, and you then look at the last few games where it was Joe Linton and it was Longstaff, and those passes are just going to the fullbacks. They're not going forward to the wide players. No. They're just going to the fullbacks who are then playing the ball forward, and that's telling.
There was a little microcosm of exactly what Bruno is at the weekend. There was one when Trippier just straight offside, that through ball around the corner. That's what Bruno gives you.
Brilliant ball.
That's what Bruno gives you, and this is what I'm saying and I know people are saying, "Oh, Tielemans, he's been poor and all that stuff," right? Tielemans is a top quality footballer, right? And he's 26? If we had signed Tielemans, right, and Bruno gets that suspension, Tielemans steps up into the Bruno role and he gives you that. He gives you something. Yes, he couldn't have played in the cup because he was cup tied, but in the league, he could have played in the league, which could have given us the momentum and a bit more pep and more step to go into that final. Because let's be honest with you, people say form doesn't matter, right? And it doesn't, but momentum does. And we went into that final probably in the worst case scenario that we wanted to be in. Man United were the informed team in Europe, right? And where our form had really dropped away. You know, I'm not saying the lads were shit, but we were struggling to close out games. We were struggling to show our teeth in games. We were drawing more games than we should have won, you know. And I think that's where the issue goes, because you go into that game and you haven't got that winning feeling. You haven't had that for a while. And you think, shit, you know, this is a massive game. This is probably the biggest game of the season. We haven't won in 5. And that does creep into the back of players' minds. I think that's what happened on Sunday, Mark. Do you think that's right?
I think so. I think form is a huge thing. When you go into a game like that, you want a good run of form. And while Newcastle weren't losing games, they come off the back of a difficult one against Liverpool to take when they were exceptional when they went down to 10 men. But the previous games, they just, and we go back to the subject from earlier on, they look toothless. When they get to that final third, they look like they've run out.
No ideas. No ideas.
And unless you, like I say, unless you've got Bruno playing at that high level, and that ball through was exceptional.
Brilliant.
And Trippier just missed times his run. That's what you want to see. You want to see players making those runs for him to play.
You need two Brunos. That ball and then the tackle he put on when he'd done his ankle in. That's, if you had 2 players that could do each one of those jobs individually, we'd be cooking with gas, mate.
And that's what I'm saying. If you've got those as a 2 in that sort of midfield where you're playing maybe the 4-2-3-1. Exactly. Speaking of tackles, and I know we've run slightly over, but I just wanted to come on to something about tackling. It goes back to Casemiro.
I know where you go with this. Spot the difference.
Why is one a yellow card and one a red card?
Because one's Casemiro and one's Bruno Guimaraes, mate. That's the difference.
20 yards away when Casemiro goes straight through Joe Linton, and it's an awful tackle. I mean, to be fair, Joe Linton pretty much just stands straight back up again and gets on.
Is that why? Do you think that's why? Because the Southampton player jumped up like he got shot with a sniper rifle. Is that possible? Do you think the difference?
I'm not I'm not going to defend Bruno's tackle because I thought it was fucking awful. And to be fair, he does walk that line, and he does lose.
He nearly did on Sunday as well. There was a couple of moments where I watched him. I thought,
there was a moment when I thought Newcastle are going to end up on 10 men again here, because I thought you could just start to see him, sense him getting wound up, and then he obviously he'd hurt himself, and I think that played part of it. But yeah, it was just that tackle was, again, it was awful. And it's just, and look, got to go back to the rest of it.
Totally you can't PDK there.
When you take the game out, take your allegiances out of the question and stuff like that. Look at the side. You're playing against a side that has David De Gea, who's Spanish international. You've got 2 World Cup winning centre backs. Exactly. You've got Luke Shaw, who's a star in the England setup. You've then got Casemiro, who's won 5 Champions League titles. A player in Marcus Rashford, who is probably the most informed player in the world at the moment. And then you've got the complementary pieces around them, like Weghorst.
And Bruno Fernandes, who I know you think he's a shithouse, but he's still one of the best midfielders on the planet, really.
He's an exceptional footballer, but I really can't stand him.
Oh, he's a whiny-faced little prick, but he is a good footballer. Just going back to the midfield battle, I watched one of Craig Hope's videos. I like what Craig does on YouTube, and he said there's a reason why Casemiro and Fred have 85 caps between them, and Joe Linton and Bruno only have 10 of Bruno's. That tells you a lot, doesn't it? Really, in an instant when you're talking about the comparison.
Like we all stamped our feet when Joe Linton didn't get called up to the World Cup. Yeah. But when you see the two play, and I'm not Fred's biggest fan, and I know you're not, but he does play well alongside Casemiro, and he does play well in that role that he's asked to play. And
I'd play well alongside Casemiro. He's a very good footballer.
There's a line. I think you've crossed it.
Hey, steady on. You wouldn't have saved that fucking shot either, if you're going to go there.
Oh, God, I would have got nowhere near it. I would have still been falling to the floor. I think you're absolutely right with that. Those two together play very, very well. And Casemiro, Casemiro is an exceptional footballer and just shows exactly why Man U paid the money that they have for him. And even at 31, I was starting to sort of go through some of the stats during the week for when you did the preview and stuff like that. It was the stats between him and Bruno are quite comparable. And look at the difference in sort of money between the two of them, and one's 31 and one's 25. And you go, well, Bruno's the kind of the better long term, granted. Casemiro is special. He's a very.
I'd love a player like Casemiro to go alongside Bruno. I think they'd be the perfect foil for Bruno. I think it really would be. So as we've overrun, we'll quickly blast through the last two before everyone goes to bed. Karius, we're going to talk about Karius, mate. So there was a lot of talk about Karius in the lead up to the game. A lot of unfair. I think kind of lambasting of the lad. Everyone bringing out the howler and everything else, it's amazing, isn't it? When a keeper makes a howler, you're the resident keeper, Mark, more than anyone, but it's like the life of a goalkeeper. It's a thankless task, really. But Alisson made a stinker midweek, everyone seems to forget about it quickly. But I thought Karius had a great game. This is what he said on Instagram. He said it was an emotional day for him coming back after such a long time. Tried our best. Unfortunately, he couldn't get the result we wanted. I'm sure it's only beginning for the club. Thank you so much for your incredible support. Just before you get into him as a goalkeeper, and again, we'll kind of keep it short and sweet. But for me, without sounding too sensationalist, fuck Dubravka. I think this lad could be our number 2 next season alongside Pope. He didn't show me anything in the game that made me think otherwise.
I think they're probably on about an equal par, the two of them. Yeah. But I think it's clear Dubravka's absolutely keen to be a number 1. I thought that's not going to happen in Newcastle.
He won't be here.
I think he moves on. And I think he's one of those players where you can make some money off him anyway. And you get more in the transfer key. So that's a no-brainer. I think Karius probably gets a deal. I think he was. I thought he was brilliant yesterday. There was the moment really early on And it was so early, and I thought, when was it Shaw or Botman that headed the ball back to him, and he just slightly overran it. Oh, Jesus! Whoa,
Yes,
what's going on? But he recovered from that really quickly. He looked assured with his feet. He looked calm. The save from Weghorst was exceptional. The one later on, I'm trying to think who he saved from, where he palmed it away. I'd have liked to see him palm it to the side of the goal rather than back out into the middle of the park, but it went to a Newcastle defender, so it was all right. Look, I think he had 8 saves yesterday. I thought he was brilliant. As a player that's come in that hasn't played for a couple of years, I thought he was exceptional and probably a highlight of the game for Newcastle, really.
Yeah, I mean, we did get ourselves in a real pickle with the goalkeepers. I mean, I still don't know if anybody knows. Did Dubravka accept his winner's medal from Manchester United? I really hope he did it on the sly.
I don't think he went up. He didn't go up for it, did he? That would have been a real.
I fucking hope not. I hope not, because I hope Joe Linton ran up and done him in. But JJ agrees with you. Spot on Karius. Yeah, I think I think with Karius as well, he's wanting that opportunity to rebuild his career. After what happened at Liverpool, and I think this club could give him that, because the life of a number 2 goalkeeper, you go back to Steve Harper, who sat by being a number 2 for so many years, and when he had his chances, he was a great goalkeeper. He didn't let you down, good shot stopper, controlled his box and his defence really well. Obviously, you knew Shea Given was the number 1, but he was happy to work alongside Shea and create that kind of unity as goalkeepers. I think Karius and Pope could be very similar, mate, and Karius seems to be a character that everybody seems to like at the club as well. They all spoke really highly of him, didn't they? And the lead up to the game, I thought some of the stuff Sean Longstaff said about him was brilliant, about how he's played in bigger games than I've ever played in my life. And also Sean was quick to point out what you said about the clean sheets that he had in the Champions League that season. I think he had the most clean sheets when he made that howler, didn't he? So
just something like, was it? I can't remember now. Was it 5 or 8 that he had this? Look, he played very well that season, and that game will forever be the one that he's highlighted for. But I think he's gone a long way of putting that to bed now. I think he's done very well. I think it's just one game because it wasn't violent conduct.
I think it is. It's just one. Yeah.
So I think it's only 3 if it's deemed as a violent one or
I think
a dangerous
you only get
something like
I think you only get 1 game for temporary insanity as a red card. I think it's only 1 game after that. Sorry, Nick. I couldn't resist it. He'll be itching to get back in. But I love the fact that Nick was there as well. Nick Pope was there, and he was cheering the lads on. He was supporting the keepers. Gillespie and Karius. That's great to see, though, isn't it? The team are there together. Gordon was there as well, even though he obviously had no chance of being in the squad, and I think that's really, really good. That it just shows you what the team's all about in terms of that unity as well. His PDK says there, he's been out of football for so long, he can only get better with confidence. And I think if he does become the number 2 next season, and you get a chance to, if we are playing European football, hopefully we do get at the very least Europa League. When you're playing these group games in Moscow or wherever the hell it is, the arse end of Europe, Karius could go and play those games, can't he?
I'm sure there'd be a few that would take a little bit of a umbrage with the fact that you've just called Moscow the arse end of Europe.
Sorry, I said the arse end of Europe, or the arse end of Europe. Sorry, I should have said the arsehole of Europe.
Putin's somewhere watching. Crap.
Yeah, it's that red dot on my head there, but watch what I'm doing there. What's in this cuppa? But yeah, I just think that if you're playing Europa Cup football and you've got Europa Cup, you got FA Cup, you got League Cup, you got Premier League, your goalkeepers are going to get more game time, and Karius would be happy with a game against somebody, whatever, finishes 4th in the Polish league or whatever. He would play that game and he'd be happy with it. Whereas Dubravka wants to be playing against City and Liverpool, and ain't going to happen. You know what I mean? So it's you've got to be sensible.
I think there's room to do it. And we've sort of seen that with Dubravka, haven't we? At times he's coming in and play the games and stuff where, when it was it the FA Cup that he came back and played in. So like you do that in those games, you sort of you can give some of your first team players the sort of the night off. As you put it, if you're playing in the arse end of Europe, you're going to allow some of your players to have the night off. And play some of the second string. I do the comment about from JJ before about Karius being a free wages obviously aside. I've just got to put on the same thing as well. So that works in your favour. If you can pull in 20 million for Dubravka and bring in, sign him on a longer term deal for nothing, then that costs you nothing in terms of FFP. I think that would be a good one.
We'll just finish on this one for T-Dog. Yeah, I mean, I think, in the summer, as Mark said there, T-Dog, I think we're going to have to strengthen. I think a lot of the dead wood will get shipped out as well. I think, the likes of your Richies, your Jamal Lascelles, your Lewises, your Paul Dummets, I think they'll all get shipped out and shipped on. And we will be looking to, I think a mixture of possibly upgrades and young potential players, likes of Harris and Ashby's coming in, those kind of guys. I think we'll see maybe more youth, maybe more energy that can come in and play. Because let's be honest with you, Richie's better days are long behind him. He's been a great servant for the club through the Championship and up into the Premier League again, as has Jamal Lascelles. Was a brilliant skipper for us, but he's no longer, top 6, top 4 Premier League material. You know what I mean? He'll do a great job probably for a middle to bottom table Premier League side or a top Championship side, as would Richie. But these guys need to get moved on and they need to be upgraded on, Mark. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, massively. I think you absolutely do. You'll see a mix of first team, the star names. You'll see a mix of younger players. I think we'll see more and more of that go on from Dan Ashworth over the next few months. But I think you probably see a few more of the Karius style signings.
Yeah, second chances.
Where they are free. Yeah, because I think that they can come in and do you a job in the squad at a level that you would be at. So well above the likes of Murphy and Richie and things. I think you take in a few of those that will come in on free transfers with
William
a point to prove.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, if you look at people, like you said, there is good free transfers you can pick up who are still hungry to play and still have quality. I mean, we're talking about Tielemans there. Tielemans is a free in the summer. Do you know what I mean? If you can get Tielemans to come to Newcastle on a free transfer, you can maybe afford to pay him a little bit of a better salary because you're not spending the money on signing the player. So
I tell you what, you could touch on free transfers. I think that's one I think would like to do as an episode, and look at potential transfers for the summer. Look at the play, particularly who's out of contract. I know there's a couple of left backs that I think Newcastle will absolutely be sniffing around in the summer. And I think Grimaldo and the lad
from Benfica, great
Dortmund, I think, is out of contract as well.
T-Dog's got it, mate. He's already answered it. Bring him back. Bring back him. the man.
But I mean, you look at the likes of. Obviously, Marcus Thuram is out of contract.
Yeah,
the likes of Olivier Giroud. Would you bring in a Giroud as a
I'd have him on the bench, I'd have him on the bench, 36 years old, experience, man. I'd definitely.
He was very good in the World Cup again, and he's that type of player that can just bring in others around him. And I think somebody like that, yes, he's not going to be your long-term future, but if he can come in and give you a season or two where you can then compete in Europa League, give you some options off the bench during the Premier League season, is that such a bad thing?
I tell you what, think of the handsome devils we'd have in the team then. Giroud, Wilson, Shaw, Karius.
I take it back. Don't sign Olivier. But Chris will just be drooling the entire time.
Steady, mate. You're not outing me on the podcast. I'm a married man with 2 children, by the way. I know Michael Barrymore was, but
I've seen you swoon so much over the likes of Shaw and Wilson and stuff. Then, yeah.
That's a good shout. What's Jethro Williams up to, mate? To be fair, I think any straight man would swoon over those guys, mate. To be fair, they have that way about them, All Wilson has to do is smile, and he's got you in the palm of his hand. But I just wish he'd start scoring more goals. But it's an interesting one actually. PK, they're saying we'll go for Stones and Sterling. That's an interesting one. Is Sterling a free transfer in the summer? No. Did he only sign a 1-year deal?
Sterling's only just signed for Chelsea. I don't think that's a 1-year deal. Tell you what, John Stones is an interesting one though, because I can see him moving on from City. I don't think
he'd be a good replacement for Shaw, wouldn't he? I think to go alongside Botman.
He's not going to be out of contract, but I don't think you'd have to pay an awful lot for him.
I'd go for him. Him and Botman would be unbelievable as a back two. Them two would be fucking superb. Bloody hell. Well, it's interesting. Stay tuned to the channel, guys. I think we will do this probably towards the end of the season when we're maybe starting to look a bit more at the transfers and who's available. But we've overrun a little bit, Mark, as we normally do.
Just a smidge.
Just a tiny little bit. But thank you so much, everyone who's tuned in. Really hope you appreciate we really hope you enjoyed the episode. We appreciate all the comments and the interactions. It really helps the episode flow. As I mentioned at the start, if you've just discovered us for the first time, or you haven't done already, smash that subscribe button. We'd love you to come and join us. We're on about 2,520 something subscribers, so loads of room for you and evermore. All free. This content, we just love talking about this club. We have 2 live shows, Mondays and Wednesdays, so make sure you come join us on 7 o'clock on Wednesday, where we'll probably get a bit more into the nitty-gritty, Mark, about how we might change the lineup and the team going forward. We're going to hopefully have Audie and Simon on with us as well, talking about that Wembley experience, which would be brilliant. And as William is keeping me right, because
just about to click that.
Thank you, William. I appreciate that.
Just the one thing we always forget to get to ask for, and it's one of those things you don't like asking for much, but yeah, please drop a like on it, guys, because it really does help out.
We do. I always forget. But yes, like the video, help us get it on YouTube. Thank you very much, T-Dog. Really appreciate your comments as well. And you, JJ. Thanks a lot, guys. It's nearly 11:30, so we're going to sign off. Let's all get ourselves to Kip. And me and Mark will catch you on Wednesday for Evermore live at 7. We'll see you later, everyone.
Take care, guys.